Well, Broncos country, what is poppin', man? The vibes here around Dove Valley during day two of minicamp and really throughout all the offseason work has been legit, man. The vibes are back. The Denver Broncos are back. It is an exciting time to be a Bronco fan, man. And, today was probably the last day that we're going to get any kind of reports or speak with anybody for about 5 to 6 weeks, whatever the math ends up being before training camp, because I do believe even though tomorrow's got a shortened schedule of 1 hour on the books, I think it's probably going to end up being a field day where everybody's having a little bit more fun before they break for the summer. So we got a lot to get to, man. Let's hop right in and let's talk about it. And I want to give a very special shout out to my buddy David Talks Broncos and so many in this industry, but mainly David Talks Broncos for my really cool overlay idea. I put it together, but I ain't gonna lie, man. Kind of took some of the ideas from him because I loved how he had everything organized. So I hope you guys dig mine. It might need a little bit of work. I'll figure this out when I figure it out. But let's get to some of the day two camps. So firstly, man, one thing that really stuck out to me is we finally were able to hear from all of the coordinators, specifically Darren Rizzi, the new special teams guy. And we already know what he's all about, man. One of, if not the best special teams coordinator in the league. It was a huge addition for the team. Super lucky that we were able to get him after he was let go, in New Orleans after really doing an amazing job being the interim head coach. I thought he had a legitimate shot to get the head coaching job. He became available and we pounced on it, and I love that. And I think it's going to be huge. And one thing he had talked about that I was really happy was asked was the new kickoff rules. And he said, I don't think anybody's talking about the new kickoff rules enough, but in case you guys are not familiar, the new kickoff rules now are legit. Because if a team elects to kick the football to the back of the end zone out of bounds, the team now gets it at the 35 instead of the 30. And what he said is the analytics are going to favor teams kicking it in and allowing for more return opportunities. Well, he's excited to work with the boy Marvin Mims. I'm super excited for that opportunity too. We touched on it, on a video a couple months back once the new rule passed, but I think it's going to be very significant. When you've got a dynamic player, one of the best return men in football, it's going to work to our advantage regardless of what teams end up wanting to do, right? Teams want to give him an opportunity to return kicks. He's going to take advantage of opportunities, especially if he's given more. And he had said last year there was like 9, or it was in the single digits in terms of the opportunities that he's gotten. If teams elect to kick away from, or not kick it and put it in play, just kick it out of bounds, well, we get the ball at the 35-yard line, which is really one less first down that you need in a drive. So instead of 3 to get in field goal range, you really need 2. So that's a big advantage to us as well. Those 5 yards are really crucial. But he had also mentioned the other guy that's going to be back there with Marvin Mims is probably going to be very important as well, because teams are going to they want to keep it in play, but they want to keep it away from Marvin Mims. Who is that person going to be? He mentioned he talked a little bit about, maybe it's one of these running backs. He wanted somebody with potentially a different style of runner, right? You could have a downhill runner. You can have a make you miss guy. The first thing that pops to mind for me is Blake Watson or Jaleel McLaughlin. Any one of those guys can, I think, be very dynamic. Jaleel, we've seen what he can do in space, so he could probably be really good in the return game. Blake Watson, I don't really know what his background is, but those two really stick out to me. Obviously, I don't think Audric Estime is going to be one of the guys, but if we're talking about the running backs, those are the two that make sense, and that could be, a very important thing to keep an eye on throughout camp and throughout the preseason, because let's say it's Blake Watson, and they really like what he can do in the return game. That almost guarantees him a roster spot, which means Jaleel or Estime could potentially find their way not with us, right? And vice versa. Same thing with Jaleel if he's back there, which I would like to see. I'd like him in that role. Tyler Bidet, maybe the forgotten man. Who knows? It's going to be interesting to see. But it was awesome to hear from him, man. He mentioned some wonderful things about Jeremy Crawshaw as well. Talked about just how amazing of a person he is. And that was the most important thing in the recruiting process. But he said of all of the punters that he's ever evaluated from a prospect standpoint, he has never evaluated someone to the level of Jeremy Crawshaw. He's going to be a great specialist for us. And it keeps making me think in the back of my head, and I'm just saying this, I'm absolutely not an advocate of this, because I'm a huge fan of this player, a huge fan of his. But I really wish somebody had asked him about Will Lutz. Now, I think Will Lutz's job is safe. They haven't brought anybody in for competition. Could that change? Maybe, but I don't think so. But it is a little bit weird that Darren Rizzi elected to move on from him for Blake Grupe, the small 5'6" kicker in New Orleans. That ended up being a bad decision. And who knows? Maybe that's not what Rizzi wanted. You don't know what the reports are. But I would have really liked for somebody to ask him that question. I'm surprised that they didn't, just to get his input on Willie Lutz. But I think Will Lutz has been clutch, man. It's so difficult to find a good, solid kicker. You see that around the league all the time. And when you have a really good one that's a good weapon, it's a huge advantage for you. And I think Will Lutz is an above average. He's an upper tier kicker. By no means is he elite, but he's very, very solid. So we'll see how that ends up playing out. And then you get to Vance Joseph, right? The boy Vance. And I'll tell you, man, obviously I hated him as a head coach. We all said a lot of rude things about him as a coach, as a head coach. But he's a phenomenal person. Always been a great human being. Just such a pleasure to listen to during these pressers. And obviously a fantastic defensive-minded coach. And he had said a lot of wonderful things. He said, I don't care about the talk about number one defense. I don't care. He even went out to make sure that he said, we had a good defense. We don't have a good defense right now. We are starting over. We are going to make sure that we clean everything up. They looked at every single snap that they played last year. They started to get a good idea of how teams are attacking them and going after them. And there's a lot there, man. There really, really is. And I think it's really important to temper those expectations. Like, yes, do I have very high expectations for the defense? Absolutely. Do I think they can be the number one defense in the NFL? Absolutely. 1,000%. But just like he alluded to, they have not played a single snap yet. So cannot wait to see how he utilizes Greenlaw. He said, we started to see a lot of ways that teams last year were attacking us. It was very consistent. He's like, I'm not going to get into that, but it was pretty obvious. They were trying to attack them across the middle of the field and finding out multiple ways to be able to isolate the linebackers in coverage and attack them that way, right? Obviously, when Riley Moss went out, that opened up another side of the field as well. But that's the big thing, and that's why Hufanga is such a big addition, because of his ability to play in the box, to play as a deep, center fielder type of safety, really just play everywhere. Same thing with Dre Greenlaw at linebacker, right? He's going to be someone that you feel a lot more confident can cover the middle of the field, can cover the tight ends, can cover those running backs. And then Jahdae Barron, man. I mean, let's not forget about that. He said it was a no-brainer of a pick. He loved the player. He did not see any weaknesses. He knows him pretty well because his cousin coaches for Texas. And he just said this guy has no weaknesses in his game. He can play everywhere. And that was another place. I think the guys that got attacked the most were any of the inside linebackers, regardless of who was starting. After the Singleton injury specifically, obviously they tried to go after PJ Locke, or defenses try to isolate him quite a bit if you're self-scouting, so they had to upgrade there. They did. And Jaquan McMillan, right? Because he just naturally saw a lot of targets. Now, Jaquan did a really good job of making teams pay at times, but he did show vulnerabilities. Now all three of those guys have been replaced with three new guys that I believe across the board are upgrades in Barron, Greenlaw, and Hufanga. And what's wonderful is that we still have Jaquan McMillan on this team. We still have PJ Locke on this team. We still have Justin Sternad. Great depth guys that if needed to can start, can be very serviceable. But that's the most important thing about this defense. It really does not have any weaknesses as starters, and it's got phenomenal depth across the board. So I cannot wait to see it. Moving on to Joe Lombardi, man. He had talked about Bo Nix. That's the big topic of conversation. How's Bo looking? He said one thing that, and Sean Payton alluded to this as well. He said we were doing red zone. Bo Nix looked phenomenal in the red zone drill. There was a play action pass where last year he struggled with the footwork quite a bit running this particular play. He did it cleanly, beautifully. It was executed immaculately. And even Bo Nix himself said, man, it's really nice to not have to be out there and thinking about the footwork, just going out there and playing. That's another piece. It's not just going to come down to Bo Nix of not thinking as much about learning the offense or where he's going to go or trying to read the defense. That's all going to be more second nature. He's going to be more comfortable there. But his footwork was a big thing, something that he struggled with mightily early in his rookie campaign, got progressively better throughout the year, which obviously led to him being a much better player. However, I will tell you that there was still some room to work there, especially when, he was faced with some pressure, right? He'd be a little bit happy feet, a little off balance. So really excited to see the strides that he makes there. I think Bo Nix is going to be in for a really big sophomore campaign. No doubt about it. No doubt about it in my brain, man. I just, to be honest with you, man, I wish we could just skip July and get into late August, because I love me. Or get into August, not late August, late July, early August. I want to get into camp. I want to start seeing these guys in pads, hitting each other. I want to see the preseason. I want it all, man. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself for the next month and a half, but it happens every year and we will figure it out. Last thing I wanted to talk about, guys, is any other moves that this team might make before training camp. I'm going to have a completely separate video dedicated to just this, of 5 different things that the Broncos must do before training camp starts. And most of them will have to do, most likely, with current players on our roster from a contract situation. But is there anybody else that we're going to add, man? It kind of happens every single year, right? I don't remember exactly who Sean Payton was asked about, but he had talked about one of the tryout players. Then he talked about Kyrese White being one of the undrafted guys. And, he said, we might sign some of these tryout players. And if we do, then that means somebody else has to go. So there could be a move coming tomorrow, potentially. It was a little bit of a tea leaf that he had, dropped in the presser. But, obviously those kinds of things are going to be back end of the roster, small moves. But is there anybody else that we're going to bring, man? Gerald Everett's available, right? You wanted to add a veteran presence. You wanted to add experience and obviously very good depth to the running back room when you sign J.K. Dobbins. Gerald Everett can do that for you in the tight end room. Right now, obviously, we do have Evan Engram, so he's kind of the J.K. Dobbins equivalent for the tight end. But if you wanted to get more guys back there, guys that, have a little bit more versatility in terms of what you're getting, he could be a really good option. We do still have Troutman, I get that, but I'm all about adding more to that room if needed. Otherwise, I can't really think of anything else, man, but I'd love to know what you guys' thoughts are below in the comments. Let me know if there's any moves that you anticipate them making or that you'd like to see them make before we get into training camp. Broncos country, this has been fun, man. We're going to keep rocking. We're going to come out with as much content as we possibly can in the weeks leading up to training camp. And then obviously once we get into camp, it's just going to be, open up the floodgates of information. Can't wait for that. But hit me up in the comments, man. Like the video, subscribe if you're not already, guys. Take it easy. Go Broncos. And until the next video, peace.